Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all well. Here we have another behind the shot video where I'm going to be running through some light setups, camera settings, and kind of like what I'm going through and what I'm thinking about when I'm working with a model in a professional environment on an actual job. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I like to keep lighting generally simple. I tend not to use more than 2 lights in most of my setups. And in this shoot, I only used one single light. And it was a harsh light source because I used a bare bulb which was only surrounded by a silver reflector. Now the reason behind that is because I wanted to create a strong, punchy light which almost resembled like strong midday sunlight. Having the light about 4 meters away meant that by the time the light reached the model, it had plenty of space to actually spread out, which would give a good coverage from head to toe and also light all of the background. And the background was simply some beige paper, and I had a couple of fake plants up on stools, and the shadows on the plants add that little bit of extra interest to what is essentially quite a plain and dull background. Now the light was also quite high up. We raised it way above eye level because I wanted the shadows to point down, and again the reason behind that is because I want to represent or replicate the feeling of natural sunlight. Camera settings were generally what I stick with when I'm shooting on the 5D Mark III and my go-to fashion lens, which is the 24-70. So shooting at 5.6, and I will normally shoot between 5.6 and f8 because that is the range in which the images tend to be sharpest on that lens. Anything over f8, if you're going to f11 and so forth, there isn't really much visible difference. Also, by shooting at around about f5.6, I can use a slightly lower light power, which means the refresh rate is going to be quicker. So it was just a simple 1 light setup. I had it slightly off to camera right. That meant we had a little bit of shadow falling onto the left hand side. And then the rest of it was just simply moving around as always, shooting close-ups at 70mm, mid shots around about 50, and then also pulling back and zooming in to compress the image and getting a little bit low down to actually create a model that looks a little bit taller. Now when you ask people what's like a good focal length to use when shooting fashion, most of the time you'll hear the same response. 50mm is a good for full length, and for like 3/4 you could go around about 85, etc. So it's not very common to shoot at like 24mm close to a subject because we're going to actually bring in distortion. However, you can use that distortion to your advantage. In this case, I actually got quite low down whilst the model was sat on the stool, used the wide focal length and the close focus, and what that meant is we elongated the model, and adding to that, because her poses and her clothing was quite dynamic, we actually created some really interesting compositions, and the actual pictures looked pretty cool. We had this larger than life appearance where she filled the frame, but then you also got that kind of perspective as she tapered off to the top, and it just creates a really quite interesting and strong image. So I encourage you, the next time you shoot, try and get in a little bit closer, use a wider focal length, and have the model sat down, leaning towards you, leaning away from you, and you might get some really interesting shots that you quite like. Now when it came to editing, it was really quite straightforward. The model had great skin and makeup and so forth, and this is a model that I've used quite a few times in the past as well. Now I make these videos for several reasons, but the main one being I like to give something back to the YouTube community. I pretty much learned everything through YouTube, and all the content that I actually accessed was free. So it's kind of my opportunity to give back. So if you do find these videos useful at any point, then please hit that like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to comment, that's great as well. Hopefully you found this video useful, and watch out for the next one.